What time is it? Because I'm hurting. I don't feel good.
All right.
Behind his sudden passing lie deep secrets, missing clues, and a history of betrayal. What seemed like a mistake now feels like a deliberate plan. From courtroom drama and twists to shocking warnings, the truth is darker than anyone expected, and the details are not good. This isn't just about losing a legend, it's about uncovering a warning. Join us as we get into all the details. The night that changed everything. On the 25th of June, 2009, the world lost the king of pop. At first, it seemed like a terrible incident. However, over the years, too many questions have been asked, and now the pieces are finally falling into place, though the full truth may be harder to accept than anyone imagined. The mystery behind Michael Jackson's passing isn't just sad, it's disturbing. And according to both confirmed records, rumors, and speculations, something much darker might have been at play. Michael Jackson was found unresponsive in his Los Angeles mansion. His doctor, Conrad Murray, tried CPR, but by the time paramedics arrived, it was too late. The news came as a shock to his millions of fans. At first, people believed it was a simple case of overdose, but as facts started rolling in, things didn't look so simple anymore. The official autopsy confirmed that Jackson passed on from acute intoxication by a strong anesthetic usually used in surgery, not something meant to help someone sleep at home. Alongside that, smaller amounts of other substances were also found in his body.
He hid from me a habit that he had. I did not know he was abusing Demerol.
These are powerful dosages that can be fatal in combination. What made this worse was that none of this was happening in a hospital or under proper care. It was all taking place in a rented home with no medical equipment around. The coroner ruled it a homicide, and all fingers pointed straight at Dr. Conrad Murray. Dr. Murray admitted to giving Jackson the strong anesthetic almost every night to help him sleep. He was not a trained anesthesiologist, and he had no proper equipment to monitor a patient under such a dangerous circumstance. Even worse, he left Jackson alone in the room while the item was still in his system. When he returned, Jackson wasn't breathing. Instead of calling 911 immediately, Murray tried to fix things himself. That delay may have cost Jackson his life. For that, Murray was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter and was sentenced to 4 years, though he only served about 2. But here's where things start to turn even stranger. While the courts placed full blame on Dr. Murray, many fans, family members, and even medical experts believed that Jackson's passing wasn't just a case of medical carelessness. They say it was bigger than one doctor's mistake. Some of Jackson's family members, including LaToya Jackson and his daughter Paris, have spoken out, claiming he was made lifeless intentionally by certain persons. They believed powerful people wanted him gone, and Dr. Murray was just a pawn. This brings us to one chilling possibility. Was Michael Jackson's passing part of something larger, maybe even a cover-up? Let's take a look at the company Jackson was working with at the time of his passing. AEG Live, the concert promoter behind his This Is It tour, was under pressure. Jackson had signed a huge contract and needed to perform 50 concerts. But behind the scenes, he was physically and emotionally exhausted. Some say AEG pushed him too hard. Others say the company hired Dr. Murray and knew about the use of the strong anesthetic. In 2013, the Jackson family sued AEG Live, arguing that the company hired Murray. The jury ruled in AEG's favor, but many questions remained unanswered. If they didn't know about the usage, should they have known? If they did know, why didn't they stop it? The deeper you go into the events surrounding that night, the more disturbing it gets. Dr. Murray claimed Jackson begged for that particular item. But even if that were true, no responsible doctor would ever agree, since it wasn't a sleeping treatment. Rather, it's something used in surgery. Administering it without proper equipment and training is highly dangerous. What makes this worse is that many experts believed that Jackson had become dependent on these items over time. He was suffering from insomnia and chronic pain. This led to a cycle of usage and doctors. But while these bad habits may explain his longing for it, it doesn't explain the system that allowed this to happen unchecked. The fact that Jackson passed on in a private room under the watch of a hired doctor using hospital-level treatment in a non-hospital setting Makes it hard to believe this was just an unfortunate incident. Years later, Conrad Murray released a video defending himself, saying he loved Jackson like a brother and took care of him. But many saw this as an attempt to shift the blame. Fans across the world questioned how a trained physician could make so many dangerous choices. Was he pressured? Was he paid to keep Jackson performing at all costs? And was someone else pulling the strings? This is where rumor turns to speculation. Some believe Jackson's passing wasn't just the result of neglect, it was planned. The theory goes like this: Jackson was worth more lifeless than alive. He had music, royalties, and rights that could be controlled after his passing. In the weeks following his passing, his estate earned millions. Some believe someone stood to gain, and that the pressure to keep him performing was only part of a bigger scheme. This has never been proven, but the fact that Jackson's estate exploded in value so quickly only added fuel to the fire. Even the DEA, the body in charge of the Substance Enforcement Administration, got involved. They looked into whether the item Jackson received had been tampered with. There had been reports of contaminated batches. However, they found that the items in Jackson's system did not come from those batches. This ruled out mistaken poisoning by a bad item. But it didn't rule out the questions about why it was being used at all. Also troubling was the fact that no one else in the house seemed to know just how serious Jackson's condition was. Staff members had seen signs of exhaustion, but no one knew he was being put under surgical anesthesia night after night. There was no medical chart, no logs, and no emergency equipment in the room. It was all kept quiet, too quiet. As more documents surfaced, it became clear that this was not a one-time mistake. It was a pattern. Jackson had reportedly been using these to help him sleep for years. Doctors from different parts of the country were prescribing him other substances, yet none of them were held accountable. Meanwhile, rumors from behind the scenes started growing louder. Some fans online began to suggest that Michael had feared for his life.
So we were friends. He also divulged a number of adversities in his life. He carried a heavy, heavy load.
In one video filmed before his passing, he said people were trying to harm him. Was he being paranoid, or was he warning us? While there's no official proof to support claims of this, these videos and statements add to the unease. Jackson had been in legal battles under public pressure and battling health issues for years. But for someone so surrounded by security, staff, and professionals, it's strange how everything went so wrong so fast. And it doesn't end there. Over time, new media documentaries have come forth tailored to the whole incident and describing how it's darker than anyone thought. These clips are not based on official investigations, but do raise questions that haven't been fully answered. They claim key witnesses were silenced and that some documents disappeared. Of course, these claims are unverified and remain part of online speculation, but they continue to gain attention. Whether you believe Jackson was a victim of a greater plan or simply of medical malpractice, one thing is clear. This wasn't just a celebrity passing, it was a collapse of responsibility. And for many, the mystery still feels unsolved. And the most shocking part? We haven't even scratched the surface yet. The next set of facts might shock you even more. Too many doctors, too little truth. If you thought Dr. Conrad Murray was the only one responsible, think again. Michael Jackson's life in the years leading up to his passing was filled with doctors, each with a prescription pad, but very few with a conscience. The deeper you dig, the clearer it becomes. This wasn't just one doctor's failure, it was a medical free-for-all that no one stopped. Before Conrad Murray entered the picture, Jackson already had a long list of physicians who gave him access to powerful items. Reports suggest that Jackson had been receiving treatment for insomnia, pain, and anxiety for years. While each prescription might have seemed harmless in isolation, together they painted a dangerous picture. It wasn't just a matter of dependency, it was a matter of access. Jackson had the money and fame to get almost any of them he wanted, and there were always doctors willing to give him what he asked for. Some did it out of fear of losing a high-profile client, others did it for the money. Either way, they became part of the problem. This pattern of overprescription wasn't a secret. It was well known within the music industry, and among people close to Jackson, but no one intervened. Some of these doctors had already been questioned about their decisions in the past. Still, the prescriptions kept coming. What's even more shocking is that no single doctor took the time to understand what the others were prescribing. There was no communication between them. Jackson could see a doctor in Los Angeles one day and another in Las Vegas the next, each one handing over new items. No one was managing the full picture. And then there were the nicknames used to protect his privacy. Jackson often used fake names when picking up prescriptions, names like Omar Arnold or Josephine Baker. Pharmacies accepted them and doctors allowed it. This made it even harder to track what he was taking. While this practice isn't illegal in itself, it does blur the line of medical responsibility. When Dr. Murray came into the story, he wasn't entering a healthy patient's life. He was entering the middle of a storm. A man who was already dependent on lots of items and struggling with pain, and rather than fix the problem, Murray added to it. And yet, the system allowed it. No regulatory body stepped in. No medical board flagged the repeated prescriptions. Not a single doctor lost their license over the years of overprescribing. Only Dr. Murray faced punishment, and even that was for a single act. What does that say about the medical system? About celebrity privilege? About the failure of those sworn to not harm? Now let's turn to another uncomfortable layer, the people who stood to benefit from Jackson's passing. This part isn't a confirmed fact, but speculation. However, it's speculation that keeps coming up. Some believe that powerful people in the music and entertainment industry had reasons to want Jackson out of the way. The theory is that he owned valuable music catalogs, including rights to songs from other top artists like the Beatles. These catalogs were worth hundreds of millions of dollars. After his passing, control of these assets shifted. That sudden change, along with the flood of posthumous earnings, raised eyebrows. Again, there's no official proof. But fans and some investigators continue to question the timing. Why was there such a rush to release new music after his passing? Why did certain companies and individuals benefit financially almost overnight? Another theory suggests that Jackson's comeback tour, This Is It, was being used as a last resort to fix his finances. He was in debt and needed the money. But some say he didn't want to do it. They believe he was being pushed beyond his limits, possibly even threatened. Some close to Jackson have claimed he feared for his safety and that he had been speaking of being in danger for weeks before he passed. Then there's the story of how the rehearsals were going. People close to the production said Jackson often appeared tired, thin, and weak. There were nights when he couldn't even complete full rehearsals, but others insisted he was improving and that he wanted to perform. The truth is likely somewhere in between. AEG Live, the company behind the tour, maintained that Jackson was in control of his health decisions. They said it was Jackson who requested Dr. Murray. But others close to Jackson, including family members, argued that AEG pressured him and hired Murray without his full consent. The lawsuit filed against AEG brought these questions to court, but the jury ultimately sided with the company. Still, the debate rages on. It's hard to ignore the role of money in all of this. Jackson was more than just a performer. He was a brand, a billion-dollar brand. And brands don't stop just because the person behind them is suffering. They sometimes become even more valuable after that person is gone. Here's another uncomfortable truth. After Jackson's passing, memorabilia was bought up. Tribute shows were created. Documentaries were made. His estate earned hundreds of millions in just a short time. Was that just the world mourning a legend? Or was it someone's plan all along? Again, these are speculations, not facts. But they're speculations backed by timelines, financial data, and the sudden rise in profits. That's why so many fans remain convinced that something was hidden. To make things more suspicious, some people who tried to speak out after Jackson's passing say they were silenced. A few staff members and insiders claimed they were told not to speak to the media. Some said their statements were ignored or twisted. A couple even claimed their jobs were threatened. These claims have not been confirmed in court, but continue to circulate online. Then there's the missing surveillance footage. Jackson's house had security cameras, yet some footage from the night of his passing reportedly vanished. No official report explained why. Was it erased? Was it never recorded? No one seems to know for sure. It's hard not to wonder if everything was done by the book. Why are there so many loose ends? Jackson might have been surrounded by people, doctors, lawyers, assistants, promoters, but somehow he was still alone in the most important moments. What happened to him wasn't just about one bad decision. It was a chain of failures that started long before June of 2009. And it doesn't stop here. Because there's more, including strange legal twists, conflicting testimonies, and financial incidents that might lead us closer to the truth than anyone expected. Legal loopholes and unanswered questions. Following Michael Jackson's passing, it seemed like the courtroom battles were just beginning. Everyone wanted answers, but what they got instead were more shadows, confusing outcomes, and unresolved truths. Only one man, Dr. Conrad Murray, was charged. Even that trial left people wondering, was justice served? Let's start with Murray's conviction. He was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter in 2011. But here's the question. If Jackson's passing was officially a homicide, why wasn't anyone else charged? Why were the other doctors, the ones who fed Jackson's dependency for years, never held accountable? It wasn't just about the final dose. It was about a pattern of treatment that broke every rule in the book. The courtroom focused on Murray, but some people say he was just a scapegoat, a convenient one. Once he was behind bars, it allowed others to quietly step away. But fans and family weren't convinced. Too many questions were left hanging in the air. One detail that raised eyebrows was the hiring contract. AEG claimed they didn't officially employ Dr. Murray, Jackson did. But documents showed that the company had discussed covering Murray's salary. That gray area led to a lot of confusion. In the end, the jury felt there wasn't enough proof that AEG was responsible. But the doubts didn't go away. Then came the money trail. After Jackson's passing, his estate made hundreds of millions of dollars. Old albums sold out, new compilations were released, merchandise flew off the shelves. Suddenly, the man who had been struggling financially was a gold mine, but only after his passing. Jackson's estate, managed by a group of executors, took control of everything. Some fans and even family members questioned how that transfer happened so quickly. Was everything in place before his passing? Or was it organized after the fact in a way that raised suspicions? Again, no proof has surfaced to show wrongdoing. But it added to the mystery, especially since Jackson had often spoken about being surrounded by people who didn't always have his best interests at heart. There were also strange legal events in the months following. Some contracts related to the tour were modified. Insurance policies were reviewed. Certain documents were sealed, making them off-limits to the public. Why were some files locked away if everything was transparent? Another odd detail involved the will. Jackson's last will was dated 2002. It named his mother, Katherine Jackson, as guardian of his children and named John Branca and John McClain as executors of his estate. But some family members claimed they had never seen that version before then. They even questioned whether Jackson signed it at all. Though the court accepted it as valid, the argument caused a deep divide within the Jackson family. Then there were the FBI files. After Jackson passed, the FBI released hundreds of pages related to past investigations into his life. Most of them were connected to earlier accusations and unrelated to his passing. But the timing was interesting. Some wondered why these files were released when they were. Was it meant to distract the public or to cloud the narrative? Also confusing was the lack of footage from Jackson's final days. There were rehearsals for the tour, and some of that was shown in the This Is It documentary. But other clips, including what happened in the hours leading up to his passing, were never made public. Security footage from his home was reportedly missing. No one ever gave a clear explanation. People close to Jackson claimed that there were inconsistencies in the timeline presented in court. What time did Murray find Jackson unresponsive? When exactly did he make the call to 911? Did he clean up the scene before help arrived? These questions were asked but never fully answered. Fans also noted that several emergency calls made from the house were unclear. The dispatcher was told Jackson wasn't breathing, but not that he had been under the influence of powerful anesthetics. Would the paramedics have acted differently if they had known? Could more have been done to save him? Meanwhile, some medical professionals who reviewed the autopsy said Jackson's body showed signs of long-term use. His body was thin. He had trouble sleeping, pain in his joints, and signs of stress. While none of this directly caused his demise, it painted the picture of a man who was already very fragile. But again, why only charge one man? Why not investigate the system that allowed this to happen? Why weren't the enablers, the ones who stood by and did nothing, ever held to account? Some say the answer is simple: money. Too many people had something to lose. A trial that focused only on Dr. Murray was clean and controlled. It kept attention away from the deeper flaws. And let's not forget the press. In the days following Jackson's passing, media coverage exploded. Every network wanted the story. But instead of investigating the medical details or the legal loopholes, much of the focus was on Jackson's past scandals. It created a storm of distraction. People argued about his personal life while the real cause of his passing was still unclear. Over time, public interest faded. Dr. Murray served his sentence and was released. AEG moved on. The estate continued to profit. But for many, the unease never left. Jackson had always lived under pressure from fans, from the press, from business partners. In the end, that pressure didn't go away. It followed him to the very last moment. Even now, some legal experts argue that the full story never made it into the courtroom. They believe there were missed opportunities and evidence that was ignored, testimonies that were cut short, and questions that were never allowed. Others believe that even if all the facts had been presented, the outcome wouldn't have changed. The system, they say, was never designed to punish everyone, just someone. And while fans around the world still play his music and hold candlelight tributes, one question continues to echo in their hearts. Who failed Michael Jackson, and why did no one stop it before it was too late? Now that the legal issues are over, it's time to look at the darker side, where there are talks about foul play, missing proof, and a big betrayal. Whispers of betrayal and the final clues. After looking at all the strange things that happened around Michael Jackson's passing, the silence, the confusing stories, the missing videos, and the unanswered questions, it's hard to ignore what people are whispering. Some of these whispers come from his staff, his family, and his fans. They all seem to point in the same direction. Some believe Michael didn't just pass. They think he was betrayed. Let's start with what Michael said before his passing. People close to him said he seemed scared. He told friends and family that someone was trying to hurt him. In one voice message he said, "They want to get rid of me. They're after me." He didn't say who he meant, but after he passed, those words began to sound very serious. Some believe he was talking about people in the music industry, powerful people who had control over his money and music rights. A few months before he passed, he was trying to take back more control of his work and money. Some people think that made him a target. This idea hasn't been proven, but many close to him believed he wasn't just being scared. They thought he was warning everyone. There were also some odd changes with his security. A few of his bodyguards said they were told not to block certain people from coming into the house, including Dr. Murray. Others said his security team was smaller in the last weeks of his life. Why would someone so famous and so valuable have less protection right before his big comeback? Then there's what the house workers said. One person shared that staff had to sign new silence contracts just weeks before Michael passed. It wasn't strange for a celebrity to want privacy, but the timing made some people feel uneasy. And then some things went missing after he passed. His sister LaToya said jewelry, personal notes, and even hard drives disappeared from the house. They were never found. Did someone take them, or were they hidden for a reason? There's also the mystery of Michael's private recordings. He had many songs and videos that were never released. Fans thought these would come out after his passing, but most of them never did. What happened to them? Who had control? His children, especially Paris, have also spoken out. Paris once said her father warned her about bad people around him. She believes he was harmed. Even though she hasn't said who she blames, her words made many fans believe something bigger was going on. Dr. Conrad Murray, the doctor who was blamed in court, has also spoken since getting out of jail. He says others let him take the blame and that he was pushed to keep Jackson performing. Some believe he's trying to save his name. Others think he might be telling the truth. And what about his tour insurance? Reports said there were big insurance policies in place if something went wrong. After he passed, those involved had to decide whether the cause of his passing was natural or someone's fault. That decision affected how much money was paid out. Some people think this is why the story around his passing was kept simple. There are also questions about who was in the house that night. Some reports say Murray was alone with Jackson. Others say the house staff were nearby. One rumor even says someone else entered Jackson's room before help arrived. These stories don't match, which makes things even more confusing. Michael's health records also didn't make sense. Some said he was sick, very thin, and couldn't sleep. Others said he was strong enough to perform. The This Is It documentary made him look healthy, but crew members later said he had rough days when he seemed tired and confused. This leads to the big question. Who was really in charge at the end of his life? Was Michael making his own choices? Or were others controlling what he did, where he went, and what he took? He once said in an interview, "Sometimes I feel like I'm a prisoner." Was he talking about fame, or was it something more serious? One of the saddest parts is that many people who truly cared about Michael were pushed away. Friends, musicians, even some family members said they couldn't reach him in those final weeks. Michael, who was always private, had become even more distant. Today, fans all over the world still light candles and listen to his music. But they also ask, how could someone so loved and so watched over pass in such a strange way? Maybe the truth is that it wasn't just one person who failed him. There were many people, a whole system that cared more about money than health. A system that pushed him too hard. A system that saw him as a business, not a human being. Now, many years later, new fans are discovering his music. But behind the songs and dances is a warning about fame, pressure, and the people who smile in front of you while planning something else behind your back. Because when you put all the pieces together, his fear, the missing files, the odd choices, and the silence, Michael Jackson's passing doesn't just feel sad, it feels like a warning. The pieces are now on the table. Secrets were buried, people stayed silent, and the system failed someone with so much love to give. Maybe the mystery is solved, but the truth, it's painful, and it changes everything we thought we knew about the King of Pop. What are your best memories of Michael Jackson? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.